The air in the grand lecture hall hummed with tension, not the excited kind that often preceded groundbreaking revelations, but a heavy, uneasy pressure that settled on every shoulder. Nervous coughs and the subtle rustle of papers filled the void as students awaited what had become less of a lesson and more of a performance. At the front stood Dr. Everett Holbrook, a towering figure in the world of theoretical physics, known as much for his unmatched intellect as for his ruthless teaching style. Behind the solid oak lectern, he scanned the room with eyes like cold steel, taking in every fidget, every avoided glance. Dr. Holbrook wasn't just a professor. He was a tyrant cloaked in academia, and this lecture hall was his coliseum. He fed off intimidation, delivered his lectures with a theatrical precision, and relished the control he held over his students. Many whispered about his brilliance, yes, but also his merciless manner. The way he could reduce even the most confident pupil to a trembling mess with a single pointed question. Among the sea of tense students sat Leah Ravel, newly transferred from the University of Manila. Her petite frame nearly vanished into the oversized seat, while others darted their eyes toward the floor or the ceiling, anywhere to avoid contact. Leah focused solely on her notebook, her pen gliding across the paper with methodical precision. Her dark hair fell like a curtain, shielding her calm, unwavering gaze. She seemed, to most, like just another quiet student, the kind easily overlooked. But not to Dr. Holbrook. His eyes stopped on her and narrowed, ever so slightly. He had a keen sense for identifying who could be broken and who might pose a challenge. And Leah, so quiet, so composed, was an enigma. A slow smirk crept across his face. The performance was about to begin. He cleared his throat sharply, the sound slicing through the room like a gavel striking wood. The chatter faded. A heavy hush descended. "Miss Ravel, isn't it?" he said, purposely stressing her last name to sound foreign and awkward on his tongue. He didn't wait for acknowledgement. "Since you're so engrossed in your notes, perhaps you'd like to enlighten us." Chapter 7. Quantum Entanglement. Specifically, the EPR paradox and its challenge to the concept of locality. The silence thickened. Students shifted uncomfortably. It was a notoriously difficult concept, one even advanced learners grappled with. Whispers trickled across the room. He picked her. "That's brutal." Leah paused for breath. Then she looked up. Her voice was soft but firm. "Professor, are you referring to the implications as outlined in the original 1935 Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paper, or including Bell's theorem and the subsequent experimental validations?" A flicker of surprise passed across Holbrook's face. He quickly disguised it with a dismissive wave. "The core implications, Miss Ravel. No need to overcomplicate." Leah gave a small nod and began to speak. What followed wasn't just a response, it was a masterclass. She explained the EPR paradox with such clarity and precision that the entire room seemed to lean in. She referenced exact pages, quoted conclusions verbatim, and connected complex ideas with stunning ease. The murmurs around the room changed. They were no longer laced with pity, but awe. Holbrook's jaw tensed. He hadn't expected this. He needed to push further. "Very well," he said tightly. "Let's move beyond the basics." 6 weeks ago, I made brief reference to Dr. Edwin Carrick's 1998 paper on temporal causality loops. Not required reading, but perhaps you've internalized that as well. Explain his proposed mechanism for paradox mitigation. A low ripple of outrage ran through the students. That paper was notoriously obscure. Leah's gaze dropped for a brief moment, then lifted. "Dr. Carrick proposed that paradoxes arising from time travel are avoided through probabilistic self-correction at the quantum level, like a twig nudged gently away from a whirlpool by a river's current." She continued with seamless fluency, outlining the paper's math-heavy core arguments and ending by quoting its abstract. Word for word. Holbrook was silent. The expression on his face darkened. The performance was no longer his. Then came the final blow. He raised a philosophical question, one carefully crafted to be unwinnable. If two communities existed, one of absolute freedom, one of rigid order, and one had to be eliminated for the greater good. Which should it be? And why? Using only objective logic. The hall went still. But Leah didn't flinch. "Professor," she said, "your question relies on a false dichotomy. It assumes only two choices exist, and that one must be destroyed. It further presumes an undefined greater good and demands logic where ethics dominate." She proceeded to dissect the question, exposing its fallacies and the manipulative structure it was built on. She didn't just answer the question. She invalidated it. A gasp echoed through the hall. Holbrook's face went pale, then red, then twisted with contempt. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "certain nuances are appreciated differently depending on one's educational background." It was a veiled insult, an attack not on her answer, but her identity. Leah met his eyes. "Professor, I graduated summa cum laude, ranked in the top percentile nationwide, and earned a presidential merit scholarship. My aptitude test placed me in the top 1%. My IQ is 185. The room exploded, not in noise, but in energy, a seismic shift, awe, respect, vindication. Holbrook stood, exposed and stripped of the intellectual armor he wielded so freely. He mumbled something about class being dismissed and fled the stage, his exit awkward and silent. One student raised a hand. "Miss Ravel, could you explain the false dichotomy again?" She smiled softly, and the students leaned in. By the end of the day, the story had spread across campus. A quiet girl from the Philippines had intellectually dethroned the most feared professor. Administrators took notice. So did students. Holbrook faded. Leah rose. She never sought the spotlight, but her brilliance refused to be hidden. She became more than a prodigy. She became a beacon for everyone ever underestimated. Because sometimes the most powerful minds speak the softest. And when they do, the world listens.